All right, let's do another one. So it's going to be First Kings 16, and we'll finish that up at 22, and then Second Kings 1 and 2. All right. Sorry, I'm going to mess with something. All right. King 16. Six. The word of Jehovah against Baasha then came to Jehu, the son of Hanani, saying, I raised you up out of the dust, made you leader over my people Israel. But you kept walking in the way of Jeroboam, and caused my people Israel to sin, so that they offended me with their sins. So I am making a clean sweep of Baasha and his house, and I will make his house like the house of Jeroboam, the son of Nebat. Anyone belonging to Baasha who dies in the city, the dogs will eat, and anyone belonging to him who dies in the fields, the birds of the heavens will eat. Okay. As for the rest of the history of Baasha, what he did and his mightiness, is it not written in the book of the history of the times of the kings of Israel? Then Baasha was laid to rest with his forefathers and was buried in Tirzah, and Elah, his son, became king in his place. Also, through the prophet Jehu, the son of Hanani, Jehovah's word came against Baasha and his house, both because of all the badness that he committed in the eyes of Jehovah, and by offending him with the work of his hands, becoming like the house of Jeroboam, and also because of his striking him down. And so, in the 26th year of King Asa of Judah, Elah the son of Baasha became king over Israel in Tirzah, and he reigned for 2 years. His servant Zimri, the chief of half of his chariot forces, conspired against him while he was in Tisra, drinking himself drunk at the house of Arza, who was over the household in Tirzah. Zimri came in and struck him down and put him to death in the 27th year of King Asa of Judah, and he became king in his place. When he became king, as soon as he sat down on his throne, he struck down all the house of Baasha. He did not spare a single male, whether of his relatives or of his friends. Thus Zimri annihilated the whole house of Baasha, according to the word that Jehovah had spoken against Baasha through Jehu the prophet. This was for all the sins that Baasha and his son Elah had committed, and the sins they had caused Israel to commit by offending Jehovah, the God of Israel, with their worthless idols. As for the rest of the history of Elah, all that he did, is it not written in the book of the history of the times of the king of Israel? In the 27th year of King Asa of Judah, Zimri became king for 7 days in Tirzah while the troops were camped against Gibbethon, which belonged to the Philistines. In time, the troops who were encamped heard it being said, Zimri has conspired and has also struck down the king. So all Israel made Omri, the chief of the army, king over Israel on that day in the camp. Omri and all Israel with him went up to Gibbethon and laid siege to Tirzah. When Zimri saw that the city had been captured, he went to the fortified tower of the king's house and burned the house down over himself, and he died. This was for his own sins that he had committed by doing what was bad in the eyes of Jehovah, by walking in the way of Jeroboam, and for the sin he had caused Israel to commit. As for the rest of the history of Zimri and this conspiracy, is it not written in the book of the history of the times of the king of Israel? It was then that the people of Israel were divided into two factions. One part of the people became followers of Tibni, the son of Ginath, wanting to make him king, and the other part followed Omri. But the people who were following Omri prevailed over the people following Tibni, the son of Ginath. So Tibni died, and Omri became king. In the 31st year of King Asa of Judah, Omri became king over Israel, and he reigned for 12 years. In Tirzah he reigned for 6 years. He bought the mountain of Samaria from Shemer for 2 talents of silver, and he built a city on the mountain. He named the city that he built Samaria. After Shemer, the owner of the mountain, Omri kept doing what was bad in the eyes of Jehovah, and he was worse than all who were prior to him. He walked in all the ways of Jeroboam, the son of Nebat, and in the sin he had caused Israel to commit by offending Jehovah, the God of Israel, with their worthless idols. As for the rest of the history of Omri, what he did and his mighty exploits, is it not written in the book of the history of the times of the kings of Israel? Then Omri was laid to rest with the forefathers and was buried in Samaria, and his son Ahab became king in his place. Ahab the son of Omri became king over Israel in the 38th year of King Asa of Judah, and Ahab the son of Omri reigned over Israel in Samaria for 22 years. Ahab the son of Omri was worse in the eyes of Jehovah than all those who were prior to him. As if it were a trivial thing for him to walk in the sins of Jeroboam, the son of Nebat, he also took as wife Jezebel, the daughter of Ethbaal, the king of the Sidonians, and began to serve Baal and to bow down to him. Further, he set up an altar to Baal at the house of Baal, and he built in Samaria. Ahab also made the sacred pole. Ahab did more to offend Jehovah the God of Israel than all the kings of Israel prior to him. In his days, Hiel, the Bethelite, rebuilt Jericho. At the cost of Abiram, his firstborn, he laid his foundation, and at the cost of Segub, his youngest, he put up its doors, according to the word of Jehovah spoken through Joshua the son of Nun. All right, 1 Kings 17. Now Elijah the Tishbite, an inhabitant of Gilead, said to Ahab, as surely as Jehovah the God of Israel, whom I serve, is living, during these years there will be no dew or rain except by my word. The word of Jehovah came to him, saying, leave here and turn eastward and hide at the valley of Cherith, east of the Jordan. You should drink from the stream, and I will command the ravens to supply you food there. He immediately went and did according to the word of Jehovah. He went and stayed by the valley of Cherith, east of the Jordan. And the ravens were bringing him bread and meat in the morning, and bread and meat in the evening, and he drank from the stream. But after some days the stream ran dry, because there was no rain in the land. The word of Jehovah then came to him, rise up, go to Zarephath, which belongs to Sidon, and stay there. Look, I will command a widow there to supply you with food. So he rose up and went to Zarephath. Then he came to the entrance of the city. There was a widow gathering pieces of wood. So he called to her and said, please bring me a little water in a cup so that I may drink. As she went to get it, he called to her, please bring me a piece of bread in your hand. At this she said, as surely as Jehovah your God is living, I have no bread, only a handful of flour and a large jar and a little oil in the small jar. Now I am gathering a few pieces of wood, and I will go in and make something for me and my son. After we have eaten, we will die. Then Elijah said to her, don't be afraid. Go in and do as you said. But first make me a small round loaf of bread with what is there, and bring it out to me. Then you can make something afterward for you and your son. For this is what Jehovah the God of Israel says. A large jar of flour will not run out, and the small jar of oil will not run dry until the day Jehovah makes it rain on the surface of the ground. So she went and did as Elijah said, and she together with him and her household ate for many days. A large jar of flour did not run out, and the small jar of oil did not run dry, according to Jehovah's word that he had spoken through Elijah. After these things, the sons of women who owned the house fell sick, and his sickness became so severe that he stopped breathing. At this, she said to Elijah, "What do you have against me, O man of the true God? Have you come to remind me of my guilt and put my son to death?" But he said to her, "Give me your son." And then he took him from her arms, and carried him up to the roof of the chamber where he was staying, and he laid him on his own bed. He called out to Jehovah, "O Jehovah my God, are you also bringing harm to the widow with whom I am staying by putting her son to death?" Then he stretched himself over the child 3 times and called out to Jehovah, "O Jehovah my God, please let this child's life come back into him." Jehovah listened to Elijah's request, and the life of the child came back into him, and he revived. Elijah took the child and brought him down from the roof chamber into the house and gave him to his mother. And Elijah said, "See, your son is alive." At that the woman said to Elijah, "Now I know that you truly are a man of God, and that Jehovah's word in your mouth is true." 1 Kings 18. After some time in the 3rd year, Jehovah's word came to Elijah, saying, "Go, present yourself to Ahab, and I will send rain on the surface of the ground." So Elijah went to present himself to Ahab while the famine was severe in Samaria. Meanwhile, Ahab called Obadiah, who was over the household. Now Obadiah greatly feared Jehovah, and when Jezebel was doing away with Jehovah's prophets, Obadiah took 100 prophets and hid them 50 to a cave, and he supplied them with bread and water. Ahab then said to Obadiah, "Go through the land to all the springs of water and to all the valleys. Perhaps we can find enough grass to keep the horses and mules alive and not have all our animals die." So they divided between themselves the land that they were going to pass through. Ahab went alone one way, and Obadiah went alone the other way. As Obadiah was on his way, Elijah was there to meet him. At once he recognized him and fell face down and said, "Is this you, my lord Elijah?" He replied to him, "It is I. Go and tell your lord Elijah is here." But he said, "What sin have I committed that you should hand your servant over to Ahab and put me to death? As sure as Jehovah your God is living, there is not a nation or a kingdom where my lord is not sent to look for you." After they said, "He is not here," he made the kingdom and the nation swear that they could not find you. Now you are saying, "Go and tell your lord Elijah is here." When I depart from you, the Spirit of Jehovah will carry you away to a place I will not know. And when I tell Ahab he does not find you, he will surely kill me. Yet your servant has feared Jehovah from his youth. Has my Lord not been told what I did when Jezebel was killing the prophets of Jehovah? Now I hid 100 of the prophets of Jehovah by groups of 50 in a cave, and kept supplying them bread and water. But now you are saying, "Go and tell your Lord Elijah is here. He will certainly kill me." However, Elijah said, "As surely as Jehovah of armies, whom I serve, is living today, I will present myself to him." So Obadiah went off to meet Ahab and told him, and Ahab went to meet Elijah. As soon as Ahab saw Elijah, he said, "Is that you, the one bringing great trouble on Israel?" To this he said, "I have not brought trouble on Israel, but you and the house of your father have, by abandoning the commandments of Jehovah and by following the Baals. And now summon all Israel to meet me at Mount Carmel, as well as the 450 prophets of Baal and the 400 prophets of the sacred pole who are eating at the table of Jezebel." So Ahab sent word among all the people of Israel and collected the prophets together at Mount Carmel. Then Elijah approached all the people and said, "How long will you be limping between 2 different opinions? If Jehovah is the true God, follow him. But if Baal is, follow him." But the people did not say a word in answer to him. Elijah then said to the people, "I am the only prophet of Jehovah left, while the prophets of Baal are 450 men. Let them give us 2 young bulls, and let them choose 1 young bull and cut it into pieces and put it on wood. They should not put fire to it. I will prepare the other young bull and will place it on the wood, but I will not put fire on it." Then you must call on the name of your God, and I will call on the name of Jehovah. The God who answers by fire will show that he is the true God. To this the people answered, "What you say is good." Okay. Elijah now said to the prophets of Baal, "Choose one young bull and prepare it first, because you are the majority. Then call in the name of your God, but you must not put fire to it." So they took the young bull that was given to them, prepared it, and kept calling on the name of Baal from morning until noon, saying, "O Baal, answer us." But there was no voice and no one answering. They kept limping around the altar that they had made. About noon, Elijah began to mock them and say, "Call out at the top of your voice. After all, he is a god. Perhaps he is deep in thought, or he has gone to relieve himself. Or maybe he is asleep and someone needs to wake him." But they were calling at the top of their voice and cutting themselves with daggers and lances according to their custom, till their blood gushed out all over them. Noon was past, and they continued in a frenzy until the time of the evening grain offering was presented. But there was no voice, and no one was answering. No one was paying attention. At length Elijah said to all the people, "Approach me." So all the people approached him. Then he repaired the altar of Jehovah that had been torn down. Elijah then took 12 stones. One sec. There we go. Elijah the prophet stepped forward and said, "O Jehovah, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Israel, today let it be known that you are God in Israel, and that I am your servant, and that it is by your word that I have done all these things. Answer me, O Jehovah, answer me, so that this people may know that you, Jehovah, are the true God, and that you are turning their hearts back to you." At that the fire of Jehovah fell from above and consumed the burnt offering, the pieces of wood, the stones, and the dust, and it licked up the water from the trench. When all the people saw it, they immediately fell face down and said, "Jehovah is the true God. Jehovah is the true God." Then Elijah said to them, "Seize the prophets of Baal. Do not let a single one of them escape." At once they seized them, and Elijah brought them down to the stream of Kishon and slaughtered them there. Elijah now said to Ahab, "Go up and drink, for there is the sound of a heavy downpour." So Ahab went up to eat and drink, while Elijah went up to the top of Carmel and crouched on the ground, keeping his face between his knees. Then he said to his attendant, "Get up, please, and look toward the sea." So he went up and looked and said, "There is nothing at all." 7 times Elijah said, "Go back." The 7th time his attendant said, "Look, there is a small cloud like a man's hand ascending out of the sea." He now said, "Go say to Ahab, hitch up the chariot, go down so that downpour may not detain you." Meanwhile the sky grew dark with clouds, the wind blew, and a heavy downpour fell. And Ahab kept riding and made his way to Jezreel. But the hand of Jehovah came on Elijah, and he wrapped his garment around his hips, and ran ahead of Ahab all the way to Jezreel. 1 Kings 19. Then Ahab told Jezebel that all that Elijah had done, and how he had killed all the prophets with the sword. At that Jezebel sent a messenger to Elijah, saying, "So may the gods do to me," and added, "If by this time tomorrow I do not make you like each one of them." At that he became afraid, so he got up and ran for his life. He came to Beersheba, which belongs to Judah, and he left his attendant there. He went a day's journey into the wilderness, and came and sat down under a broom tree, and he asked that he might die. He said, "It is enough now, O Jehovah, take my life away, for I am no better than my forefathers." Then he lay down and asleep under the broom tree. But suddenly an angel touched him and said to him, "Get up and eat." When he looked, there at his head was a round loaf on heated stones and a jug of water. He ate and drank and lay down again. Later the angel of Jehovah came back a second time and touched him again and said, "Get up and eat, for the journey will be too much for you." So he got up and ate and drank, and in the strength of that nourishment he went on for 40 days and 40 nights, till he reached Horeb, the mountain of the true God. There he entered a cave and spent the night, and look, Jehovah's word came to him, telling him, "What are you doing here, Elijah?" To this he said, "I have been absolutely zealous for Jehovah, the God of armies. For the people of Israel have forsaken your covenant, your altars they have torn down, and your prophets they have killed with the sword, and I am the only one left. Now they are seeking to take my life away." But he said, "Go out and stand on the mountain before Jehovah, and look, Jehovah was passing by, and a great strong wind was splitting the mountains and breaking crags before Jehovah. But Jehovah was not in the wind. After the wind there was an earthquake, but Jehovah was not in the earthquake. After the earthquake there was a fire, but Jehovah was not in the fire. After the fire there was a calm, low voice. As soon as Elijah heard it, he wrapped his face in his official garment, and went out and stood at the entrance of the cave. Then a voice asked him, "What are you doing here, Elijah?" To this he said, "I have been absolutely zealous for Jehovah, the God of armies, for the people of Israel have forsaken your covenant. Your altars they have torn down, and your prophets they have killed with the sword, and I am the only one left. Now they are seeking to take my life away." Jehovah said to him, "Return and go to the wilderness of Damascus. When you arrive, anoint Hazael as king over Syria. And you should anoint Jehu, the grandson of Nimshi, as king over Israel. And you should anoint Elisha, the son of Shaphat, from Abel Maholah, as prophet to take your place. Anyone escaping from Hazael's sword, Jehu will put to death. And anyone escaping from Jehu's sword, Elisha will put to death. And I still have 7,000 in Israel, all whose knees have not bent down to Baal, and whose mouths have not kissed him." So he went from there and found Elisha, the son of Shaphat, while he was plowing with 12 pairs of bulls ahead of him, and he was in the 12th pair. So Elisha went over to him and threw his official garment on him. At that he left the bulls and ran after Elijah and said, "Please let me kiss my father and my mother, then I will follow you." He replied to him, "Go return, for what I have done. What have I done to stop you?" So he went back and took a pair of bulls and sacrificed them, and he used the plowing gear to boil the meat of the bulls and gave it to the people, and they ate. After that he rose up and followed Elijah and began to minister to him. Now King Benhadad of Syria gathered his whole army together along with 32 other kings and their horses and chariots. He went up and laid siege to Samaria and fought against it. Then he sent messengers to King Ahab of Israel at the city and said to him, "This is what Benhadad says: Your silver and your gold are mine, as well as the best of your wives and your sons." To this the king of Israel answered, "According to your word, my lord the king, I am yours, along with all that belongs to me." The messengers came back and said, "This is what Benhadad says: I sent this message to you, your silver, your gold, your wives, and your sons, and you will give me. But about this time tomorrow I will send my servants to you, and they will carefully search your house and the houses of your servants, and all your desirable things they will seize and take away." At that the king of Israel called all the elders of the land and said, "Take note, please, and see that this man is bent on bringing calamity." So he demanded my wives, my sons, my silver, and my gold, and I did not refuse him. Then all the elders and all the people said to him, "Do not obey and do not consent." So he said to the messengers of Benhadad, "Say to my lord the king, all that you first demanded of your servant I will do, but this I cannot do." With that the messengers went off and brought word back to him. Benhadad now sent him his message, so that the gods do to me, and add to it, if there is enough dust in Samaria to give each of the people following me a handful. The king of Israel answered, "Tell him, the one who puts on his armor should not boast about himself like one who takes it off." As soon as he heard his reply, while he and the kings were drinking in their tents, he said to his servants, "Get ready to attack." So they got ready to attack the city. But a prophet approached King Ahab of Israel and said, "This is what Jehovah says: Have you seen all this large crowd? Here I am giving it into your hand today, and then you will know that I am Jehovah." Ahab asked, "By whom?" To which he said, "This is what Jehovah says: By the attendants of the princes of the provinces." So he asked, "Who will start the battle?" To which he said, "You." Ahab then counted the attendants of the princes of the provinces, and they were 232. After that he counted all the Israelite men, 7,000. They went out at noon, while Benhadad was drinking himself drunk in the tents, along with the 32 kings who were helping him. When the attendants of the princes of the provinces came out first, Benhadad at once sent messengers. They reported to him, "Men have come out from Samaria." At that he said, "If they have come out for peace, take them alive. Or if they have come out for battle, you should still take them alive." But when these come out of the city, the attendants of the princes of the provinces and the armies that were following them, each one struck down his opponent. Then the Syrians fled, and Israel pursued them. But King Benhadad of Syria escaped on a horse with some of the horsemen. But the king of Israel went out and kept striking down the horses and the chariots, and he inflicted a great defeat on the Syrians. Later the prophet considered the king of Israel and said to him, "Go strengthen yourself and consider what you are going to do. For at the start of the next year, the king of Syria will come up against you." Now the servants of the king of Syria said to him, "Their God is a God of mountains. That is why they overpowered us. But if we fight against them on level land, we will overpower them. Also do this: remove all the kings from their places and replace them with governors. Then gather an army equal to the army you lost, horse for horse and chariot for chariot. Let us fight against them on level land, and we will surely overpower them." So he listened to their advice and did just that. At the start of the year, Benhadad mustered the Syrians and went to Aphek for battle against Israel. The people of Israel were also mustered and supplied, and they went out to meet them. When the people of Israel camped in front of them, they were like two tiny flocks of goats, while the Syrians filled the whole land. Then the man of the true God approached the king of Israel and said, "This is what Jehovah says, because the Syrians have said, 'Jehovah is a God of mountains, and he is not a God of plains.' I will give all this large crowd into your hand, and you will certainly know that I am Jehovah." They remained encamped opposite each other for 7 days, and on the seventh day the battle began. The people of Israel struck down 100,000 Syrian foot soldiers that day, in one day, and the rest fled to Aphek into the city. But the wall fell down on 27,000 of the men who were left. Ben-Hadad also fled and came into the city, and he hid in an inner room. So his servant said to him, "Look, we have heard that the kings of the house of Israel are merciful kings. Please let us wear sackcloth on our hips and put ropes on our heads and go out to the king of Israel. Perhaps he will spare your life." So they wore sackcloth around their hips and ropes on their heads and came into the king of Israel and said, "Your servant Ben-Hadad says, 'Please let me live.'" He replied, "Is he still alive? He is my brother." The men took it as an omen and quickly took him at his word. So they said, "Ben-Hadad is your brother." At that he said, "Go and get him." Then Ben-Hadad went out to him, and he had him get up into the chariot. Ben-Hadad now said to him, "The cities that my father took from your father I will return, and you may establish markets for yourself in Damascus, just as my father did in Samaria." Ahab replied, "On the basis of this agreement I will let you go." With that he made an agreement with him and let him go. By the word of Jehovah, one of the sons of the prophets said to his companion, "Strike me, please." But the man refused to strike him. So he said to him, "Because you did not listen to the voice of Jehovah, as soon as you leave me, a lion will kill you." After he left him, a lion came upon him and killed him. He found another man and said, "Strike me, please." So the man struck him and wounded him. Then the prophet went and waited for the king by the road, disguising himself with a bandage over his eyes. As the king was passing by, he cried out to the king, "Your servant went into the thicket of battle, and there was a man coming out who brought a man to me and said, 'Guard this man. If he is found missing, your life will have to take the place of his life, or else you will pay a talent of silver.' And while your servant was busy here and there, uh, suddenly the man was gone. The king of Israel said to him, 'So your own judgment will be, you have decided it yourself.' Then he quickly removed the bandage from his eyes, and the king of Israel recognized that he was one of the prophets. He said to him, 'This is what Jehovah says. Because you have let the man who I said should be destroyed escape from your hand, your life must take the place of his life, and your people the place of his people.' At that, the king of Israel went home to Samaria sullen and dejected." 1 Kings 21. After these things, an incident took place concerning a vineyard that belonged to Naboth the Jezreelite. It was in Jezreel, next to the palace of Ahab the king of Samaria. Ahab said to Naboth, "Give me your vineyard for me to use as a vegetable garden, for it is near my house. Then I will give you a better vineyard to replace it. Or if you prefer, I will give you its value in money." But Naboth said to Ahab, "It is unthinkable from Jehovah's standpoint for me to give you the inheritance of my forefathers." So Ahab came into his house, sullen and dejected over the answer that Naboth the Jezreelite had given him when he said, "I will not give you the inheritance of my forefathers." Then he lay down on his bed. He kept his face turned away and refused to eat. His wife Jezebel came in and asked him, "Why are you so sad that you refuse to eat?" He replied to her, "Because I said to Naboth the Jezreelite, 'Give me your vineyard for money, or if you prefer, let me give you another vineyard to replace it.' But he said, 'I will not give you my vineyard.'" His wife Jezebel said to him, "Are you not the one ruling as king over Israel? Get up, eat something, and let your heart be cheerful. I will give you the vineyard of Naboth the Jezreelite." So she wrote letters of Ahab's name and sealed them with his seal, and sent letters to the elders and the nobles who lived in Naboth's city. She wrote in the letters, "Proclaim a fast and have Naboth sit at the head of the people, and have two good-for-nothing men sit in front of him to testify against him, saying, 'You have cursed God and the king.' Then bring him out and stone him to death." So the men of the city, the elders and the nobles who lived in the city, did just as was written, and the letters that Jezebel sent to them. They proclaimed a fast and had Naboth sit at the head of the people. Then two of the good-for-nothing men came in and sat down in front of him and began to testify against Naboth in front of the people, saying, Naboth has cursed God and the king. After that, they brought him to the outskirts of the city and stoned him to death. They now sent word to Jezebel, saying, Naboth has been stoned to death. As soon as Jezebel heard that Naboth had been stoned to death, she said to Ahab, Get up, take possession of the vineyard of Naboth the Jezreelite, which he refused to give you for money. For Naboth is no longer alive, he is dead. As soon as Ahab heard that Naboth was dead, Ahab got up to go down to the vineyard of Naboth the Jezreelite to take possession of it. But Jehovah's word came to Elijah the Tishbite, saying, Get up, go down to meet Ahab, the king of Israel, who is in Samaria. There he is in the vineyard of Naboth, where he has gone to take possession of it. You must tell him, This is what Jehovah says. Have you murdered a man? And also, where is his property? They say to him, This is what Jehovah says. In the place where the dogs licked up the blood of Naboth, the dogs will lick up your own blood. Ahab said to Elijah, So you have found me, O my enemy. He replied, I have found you because you are determined to do what is bad in the eyes of Jehovah. Here I am bringing calamity upon you, and I will make a clean sweep after you, and I will annihilate from Ahab every male, including the helpless and weak in Israel. And I will make your house like the house of Jeroboam, the son of Nebat, and like the house of Baasha, the son of Ahijah, for you have provoked my anger and have caused Israel to sin. Also concerning Jezebel, Jehovah has said, The dogs will eat up Jezebel and the plot of the land of Jezreel. Anyone belonging to Ahab who dies in the city, the dogs will eat up, and anyone who dies in the fields, the birds of the heavens will eat up. Indeed, there has never been anyone like Ahab, who was so determined to do what was bad in the eyes of Jehovah, egged on by his wife, Jezebel. He acted in the most detestable way by going after the disgusting idols, just as all the Amorites had done, whom Jehovah drove out from before the Israelites. As soon as Ahab heard these words, he ripped his garments apart and put sackcloth on his body, and he went on a fast and kept lying down in sackcloth and walking despondently. Jehovah's word then came to Elijah the Tishbite. Have you seen how Ahab has humbled himself on my account? Because he has humbled himself before me, I will not bring calamity during his lifetime. I will bring calamity upon his house in the days of his son. Interesting. Okay. For 3 years, there was no war between Syria and Israel. In the third year, King Jehoshaphat of Judah went down to the king of Israel. Then the king of Israel said to his servants, Do you know that Ramoth Gilead belongs to us? And yet we were hesitating to take it back from the king of Syria. He then said to Jehoshaphat, Will you go with me to fight at Ramoth Gilead? Jehoshaphat replied to the king of Israel, I am the same as you. My people are the same as your people. My horses are the same as your horses. But Jehoshaphat said to the king of Israel, First inquire, please, for the word of Jehovah. So the king of Israel gathered the prophets together, about 400 men, and said to them, Should I go to war against Ramoth Gilead, or should I refrain? They said, Go up, and Jehovah will give it into the king's hand. Jehoshaphat then said, Is there not a prophet of Jehovah? Let us also inquire through him. At that the king of Israel said to Jehoshaphat, There is still one more man through whom we can inquire of Jehovah, but I hate him, for he never prophesies good things concerning me, only bad. He is Micaiah, the son of Imlah. However, Jehoshaphat said, The king should not say such a thing. So the king of Israel called a court official and said, Bring Micaiah, the son of Imlah, quickly. Now the king of Israel and Jehoshaphat, the king of Judah, were sitting on his throne, dressed in royal attire, at the threshing floor of the entrance of the gate of Samaria, and all the prophets were prophesying before them. Then Zedekiah, the son of Chenaanah, made for himself iron horns and said, This is what Jehovah says. With these you will gore the Syrians until you exterminate them. All the other prophets were prophesying the same way, saying, Go up to Ramoth Gilead, and you will be successful. Jehovah will give it into the king's hand. So the messenger who went to call Micaiah said to him, Look, the words of the prophets are unanimously favorable to the king. Let your words please become like the words and speak favorably. But Micaiah said, As surely as Jehovah is living, whatever Jehovah says to me is what I will speak. Then he came into the king, and the king asked him, Micaiah, should we go to war against Ramoth Gilead, or should we refrain? At once he said, Go up, and you will be successful. Jehovah will give it into the king's hand." At that the king said to him, "How many times must I put you under oath not to speak to me anything but the truth in the name of Jehovah?" So he said, "I see all the Israelites scattered on the mountains, like sheep that have no shepherd." Jehovah said, "These have no master. Let each one go back to his house in peace." Then the king of Israel said to Jehoshaphat, "Did I not tell you he will not prophesy good things concerning me, only bad?" Micaiah then said, "Therefore hear the words of Jehovah. I saw Jehovah sitting on his throne, and all the army of the heavens standing by him, to his right and to his left. Jehovah then said, Who will fool Ahab, so that he will go up and fall at Ramoth Gilead?" And one was saying one thing, while another said something else. Then a spirit came forward and stood before Jehovah and said, "I will fool him." Jehovah asked him, "How will you do it?" He replied, "I will go out and become a deceptive spirit in the mouth of all of his prophets." So he said, "You will fool him, and what is more, you will be successful. Go out and do that." And now Jehovah has put a deceptive spirit in the mouth of all these prophets of yours, but Jehovah has declared calamity for you. Zedekiah, the son of Chanana, now approached and struck Micaiah on the cheek and said, "Which way did the Spirit of Jehovah pass from me to speak with you?" Micaiah replied, "Look, you will see which way on the day when you enter the innermost room to hide." Then the king of Israel said, "Take Micaiah and turn him over to Amon, the chief of the city, and to Joash, the king's son. Tell them, this is what the king says: Put his fellow in the prison, and feed him with a reduced allowance of bread and water until I return in peace." But Micaiah said, "If you do return in peace, Jehovah has not spoken with me." Then he added, "Take note, all you peoples." So the king of Israel and Jehoshaphat, the king of Judah, went up to Ramoth Gilead. The king of Israel now said to Jehoshaphat, "I will disguise myself and will go into battle, but you should put on your royal attire." So the king of Israel disguised himself and entered the battle. Now the king of Syria had ordered his 32 chariot commanders, "Do not fight with anyone, small or great, except the king of Israel." And as soon as the chariot commanders saw Jehoshaphat, they said to themselves, "Surely it is the king of Israel." So they turned to fight against him, and Jehoshaphat began to cry for help. When the chariot commanders saw that it was not the king of Israel, they immediately turned back from following him. But one man shot his bow at random, and he struck the king of Israel between the joints of his coat mail. So the king said to his charioteer, "Turn around and take me out of the battle, for I have been badly wounded." The fighting raged throughout that day, and the king had been propped up in the chariot facing the Syrians. The blood of the wounds poured into the interior of the war chariot, and he died in the evening. Around sunset, a cry passed through the camp, saying, "Everyone to his city, everyone to his land." Thus the king died, and he was brought to Samaria. They buried the king in Samaria. When they washed off the war chariot by the pool of Samaria, the dogs licked up his blood, and the prostitutes bathed there, according to the word that Jehovah had spoken. As for the rest of the history of Ahab, all that he did, and the house of ivory that he built, and all the cities that he built, is it not written in the book of the history of the times of the kings of Israel? Then Ahab was laid to rest with his forefathers, and his son Ahaziah became king in his place. Jehoshaphat, the son of Asa, had become king over Judah in the 4th year of King Ahab of Israel. Jehoshaphat was 35 years old when he became king, and he reigned for 25 years in Jerusalem. His mother's name was Azubah, the daughter of Shili. He kept walking in all the way of Asa, his father. He did not deviate from it, and he did what was right in Jehovah's eyes. However, the high places were not removed, and the peoples were still sacrificing and making sacrificial smoke on the high places. Jehoshaphat kept peaceful relations with the king of Israel. As for the rest of the history of Jehoshaphat, his mighty exploits, and how he waged war, is it not written in the book of the history of the times of the kings of Judah? He also cleared out the land of rest of the rest of the male temple prostitutes who had been left over in the days of Asa his father. Then there was no king in Edom; a deputy was acting as king. Jehoshaphat also made Tarshish ships to go to Ophir for gold, but they did not go because the ships were wrecked at Ezion Geber. It was then Ahaziah, the son of Ahab, said to Jehoshaphat, "Let my servants go with your servants in the ships." But Jehoshaphat did not consent. Then Jehoshaphat was laid to rest with his forefathers, and he was buried with his forefathers in the city of David, his forefather, and his son Jehoram became king in his place. Ahaziah, the son of Ahab, became king over Israel in Samaria in the 17th year of King Jehoshaphat of Judah, and he reigned over Israel for 2 years. And he kept doing what was bad in Jehovah's eyes, and walking in the way of his father and his mother, and in the way of Jeroboam the son of Nebat, who had caused Israel to sin. He continued serving Baal and bowing down to him, and kept offending Jehovah, the God of Israel, just as father had done. Okay. End of First Kings, Second Kings, and I think I said 2. Yep. Second Kings 1. After the death of Ahab, Moab revolted against Israel. It was then that Ahaziah fell down through the grating of his roof chamber in Samaria and was injured. So he sent messengers and said to them, "Go, inquire of Beelzebub, the god of Ekron, to find out whether I will recover from this injury." But the angel of Jehovah said to Elijah the Tishbite, "Rise up, go meet the messengers of the king of Samaria, and say to them, Is it because there is no God in Israel that you are going to inquire of Beelzebub, the god of Ekron? Therefore, this is what Jehovah says: You will not leave the bed on which you are lying, for you will certainly die." With that, Elijah went off. When the messengers returned to him, he immediately said to them, "Why have you come back?" They replied to him, "There was a man who came up to meet us, and he said, 'Go return to the king who has sent you, and tell him, This is what Jehovah says. Is it because there is no God in Israel that you are sending to inquire of Beelzebub, the god of Ekron? Therefore, you will not leave the bed on which you are lying, for you will certainly die.'" At this he asked them, "What did the man look like when he came up to meet you and spoke these words to you?" So they said to him, "He was a man with a garment of hair and a leather belt around his waist." Immediately he said, "It was Elijah the Tishbite." The king then sent to him a chief of 50 with his 50 men. When he went up to him, he was sitting on the top of the mountain. He said to him, "Man of the true God," the king says, "come down." But Elijah answered the chief of the 50, "Well, if I am a man of God, let fire come down from the heavens and consume you and your 50 men." And fire came down from the heavens and consumed him and the 50 men. So the king sent again to him another chief of 50 with his 50 men. He went and said to him, "Man of the true God, this is what the king says, come down quickly." But Elisha answered them, "If I am a man of the true God, let fire come down from the heavens and consume you and your 50 men." And fire of God came down from the heavens and consumed him and his 50 men. Then the king sent a third chief of 50 and his 50 men. But the third chief went up and bowed down on his knees in front of Elijah and began to beg for favor and say to him, "Man of the true God, please let my life and the lives of those 50 servants of yours be precious in your eyes. Fire has already come down from the heavens and consumed 2 former chiefs of 50 and their groups of 50. But now let my life be precious in your eyes." At that the angel of Jehovah told Elijah, "Go down with him. Do not be afraid of him." So he rose and went down with him to the king. Elijah then said to the king, "This is what Jehovah says. You sent messengers to inquire of Beelzebub, the god of Ekron. Is it because there is no God in Israel? Why did you not inquire of his word? Therefore, you will not leave the bed on which you are lying, for you will certainly die." So he died according to the word of Jehovah that Elijah had spoken. And because he did not have a son, Jehoram became king in his place in the 2nd year of Jehoram, the son of Jehoshaphat, the king of Judah. As for the rest of the history of Ahaziah, what he did, is it not written in the book of the history of the times of the kings of Israel? All right, 2 Kings 2. When Jehovah was about to take Elijah up to the heavens in a windstorm, Elijah and Elisha went out from Gilgal. Elijah said to Elisha, "Stay here, please, because Jehovah has sent me on to Bethel." But Elisha said, "As surely as Jehovah is living and as you are living, I will not leave you." And they went down to Bethel. Then the sons of the prophets in Bethel came out to Elisha and said to him, "Do you know that today Jehovah is taking your master away from headship over you?" At this he said, "I already knew it. Be silent." Elijah now said to him, "Elisha, stay here, please, because Jehovah has sent me on to Jericho." But he said, "As surely as Jehovah is living and as you are living, I will not leave you." So they came to Jericho. Then the sons of the prophets who were in Jericho approached Elisha and said to him, "Do you know that today Jehovah is taking your master away from headship over you?" At this he said, "I already know it. Be silent." Elijah now said to him, "Stay here, please, because Jehovah has sent me on to the Jordan." But he said, "As surely as Jehovah is living as you are living, I will not leave you." So both of them went on. And 50 of the sons of the prophets also went and stood watching from a distance, while the two of them stood by the Jordan. Then Elijah took his official garment and rolled it up and struck the waters, and they were divided to the left and to the right, so that both of them went across on the dry ground. As soon as they had gone across, Elijah said to Elisha, "Ask what you want me to do for you before I am taken from you." So Elisha said, "Please, may I receive a double portion of your spirit?" He replied, "You have asked a difficult thing. If you see me when I am taken from you, it will happen for you that way, but if you do not, it will not happen." As they were walking along, speaking as they walked, suddenly a fierce chariot and fiery horses made a separation between the two of them, and Elijah ascended to the heavens in the windstorm. While Elisha was not watching, he was crying out, my father, the chariot of Israel and his horsemen." When he could no longer see him, he took hold of his own garments and ripped them into two pieces. After that, he picked up the official garment of Elijah that had fallen off him and went back and stood by the bank of the Jordan. Then he took the official garment of Elijah that had fallen off him and struck the waters and said, "Where is Jehovah, the God of Elijah?" When he struck the waters, they were divided to the left and to the right, so that Elisha went across. When the sons of the prophets at Jericho saw him from a distance, they said, "The spirit of Elijah has settled down on Elisha." So they went to meet him and bowed down to the ground before him. They said to him, "Here are 50 capable men with your servants. Let them go, please, to look for your master. Perhaps the Spirit of Jehovah has lifted him up and thrown him on one of the mountains or in one of the valleys." But he said, "Do not send them." However, they kept urging him until he was embarrassed. So he said, "Send them." They sent the 50 men, who kept searching for 3 days but did not find him. When they returned to him, he was staying in Jericho. Then they said to them, "Did I not tell you? Did I tell you not to go?" In time, the men of the city said to Elisha, "My master can see that the city is well situated, but the water is bad and the land is barren." At that he said, "Bring me a small new bowl and put salt in it." So they brought it to him. Then he went out to the source of the water and threw salt in it, and said, "This is what Jehovah says: I have healed this water, no more will it cause death or barrenness." And the water has been healed down to this day, according to the word spoken by Elisha. He went up from there to Bethel. As he was going along the way, some young boys came out from the city and began to jeer at him. And they kept saying to him, "Go up, you bald head! Go up, you bald head!" Finally, he turned around and looked at them and cursed them in the name of Jehovah. Then 2 she-bears came out of the forest and tore 42 of the children to pieces. He kept going from there to Mount Carmel, and from there he returned to Samaria. End of 2 Kings 2. End of AV 37. Sorry, 35. Uh,